Hello and welcome to NUFC 360. As you'll see, we've got a familiar face. You'll probably know him from Transfer Centre, Sky Sports News, and maybe a bit on Soccer Saturday when he was covering Southampton versus Newcastle. But that's something we'll get into maybe at a later part in this. So, Mark, how are you?
Yeah, not so bad, thanks. Non-stop. The season climax was frenetic, fantastic, and incredibly busy. And then everyone thinks, well, it's going to go quiet for a bit. And you get about 4 days where you don't have anything going on. And then suddenly the transfer window opens and it ramps up again. And the first part of June has been incredibly busy. There's been a lot of activity. I know not so much up in Newcastle just yet, but football never stops. The Club World Cup's around the corner. The Euro under-21 tournament is in full swing. You got the women's Euros, so yeah, it's the game we all love, and it never seems to disappear or go away. So yeah, all good, thank you.
Good. Now, obviously, whether or not people do or do not know, but obviously, with your links with Bournemouth, obviously you've had a good relationship with Eddie. You've obviously been able to become friends, and obviously I'm sure you watch what he's doing. You might not necessarily be rooting for him when we're facing your side, Bournemouth, but other than that, I'm sure you are. What was it? What did you feel? I think it was about maybe 6:30 on the 16th of March, if I remember, when the final whistle went and Eddie Howe became the first manager in 70 years to bring a domestic trophy back to Tyneside.
Just phenomenal. And immediately you got the sense of achievement for the city collectively. Obviously, I was delighted for Eddie Howe, someone I've known since I walked into football 2001. I was also delighted again for the players. Stephen Purchase, Jason Tindall, Simon Weatherston, Dan Hodges, Shwan Jalal. These are all people I've known for my whole football life. So over 20 years. I've grown up with them, and I'm lucky enough to call them all friends. And I watch from afar at their successes, what they do, what they've transformed Newcastle into, and you just feel like you're a Geordie for the day. You just feel so a part of their success, and you just knew what it meant to everyone connected to that football club, because of all the amazing highs and moments and goals and seasons they've had in the past. No one has ever been able to deliver silverware, major silverware, in the way in which Eddie Howe has. And it's funny because there are loads of Newcastle fans around the world, and there are a number of Newcastle fans at Sky. And they'd always stop me in the corridor, they stop me in reception, and they'd say, "Oh, do you know what? I love Sir Bobby. I love Kev. I think Eddie might be my favourite. Eddie Howe might be my favourite." And that happened over the last sort of 6, 12 months or so, where they were constantly saying things like that. And that's when you really sort of get a sense that what they're doing up there is unique. What they've been doing up there is so special. And they've really built a connection to the fan base. They've got everyone falling in love with the team again, not just the team, but the players, the style of football, what they're doing off the pitch, the community spirit they've taken up there, and just managed to really hone in on. And I'm so delighted, like genuinely so happy for everyone connected to Newcastle. I know how passionate the fans are. I've seen how passionate the fans are. And to see, someone who I worked with a number of years ago, 17 years ago at Bournemouth, and players, Stephen Purchase and Jason Tindall, that I was able to work with and spend time with growing up, to see them have the success, which I knew that they would have eventually because they're all super talented guys, was just phenomenal. So I'll never forget those moments, and I know how much it meant to me, and how much it meant to them, and there's so many family members that are all closely linked. There's wives and kids and girlfriends and all the people that are a part of that football club that I know and that are friends of mine, and I was able to share in their joy. So yeah, absolutely phenomenal. And I'm not surprised as well. Champions League football, 2 years out of the last three, major piece of silverware in the cabinet. If someone had said that, that's what they do in the 3.5, 4 years that they've been there, whatever it is, I wouldn't be surprised, because they're all top class.
Were you maybe a little bit disappointed that you didn't get the invite from JT to go to Box Park to celebrate?
Do you know something? JT, from the moment that Newcastle got to the final, I think every single one of the coaching staff had about 312 messages each requesting tickets. And yeah, suddenly everyone's family had tripled in size. And instead of having to find 10 tickets, they had to find 30 tickets. It was one of those occasions that everyone wanted to be a part of. I think I was working at the time, so I didn't get the chance to go and celebrate and be a part of it. But yeah, that's Jason, that's Newcastle. You know, you saw the scenes in central London the night before. You saw the pub that was branded up, and you know, they've taken that football club into their family. The football club's taken their families into the football club, and it's just such a nice thing to witness.
Now, obviously, you know the coaching staff well. Who would you say is the joker out of them?
Do you know what? People might not think this, but Eddie Howe has got a brilliant sense of humour. Right, he's very, very quirky, funny, lively guy. But I think they've all got they're all on the same wavelength with their humour, with how they are, with how they operate. They all have the same standards. They're all targeting the same goal, and I think that's what's made Eddie and his management team so successful. Is because they're all so similar, and where they're different, they complement each other. So one person might have a really good skill set when it comes to this, and someone else might not be as good, but he's better at something else. So that's what makes the team. That's what makes that management team so successful. But yeah, no, Ed does have a really good sense of humour. But they all do. You know, Perchy, Tinners, JT. Obviously, you know, everyone loves Jason, and he's a smart guy. He's a talented coach. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he uses all of those tools in his box to win games and to rile the opposition, to get the best out of players individually. So no, they've all got a good sense of humour, and I'm sure they celebrate it in the right way.
The question which I've got is, how do you think Jason takes to the nickname that he's been given in Newcastle fans of Mad Dog?
I think he loves it in a way. It's all a part of the fun. I think it's a sign of endearment. It's a sign of affection. The fact that he's probably one of the most famous assistant managers in the Premier League shows you a little bit about what he is and what he's about and how he does it. Jason is a really humble, good guy. He cares deeply about the people he's around. He's a very thoughtful guy. He's really passionate about being an exceptional coach. He's so good at supporting Eddie in the right way. They complement each other perfectly, and his family love it as well. You know, he's got kids that are massive Newcastle fans that come up to watch as many games as they possibly can. You know, they are a huge part of that city, and they love being in that city, and the success they've had doesn't surprise me. I think it's Jason's brother-in-law is a Newcastle fan. And you know, and that goes back for 30 plus years. So it's not like there was a connection that started when Jason walked into Newcastle as assistant manager. That connection was there from a long time ago. So yeah, no, it's Jason's brilliant. He's such a good guy.
Now, also as we know, I don't want to say it, but I will say it. Eddie's seen off another sporting director with Paul Mitchell leaving in June. In your mind, do you think Eddie Howe likes to work best when it is like just he'll go say, look, those are the players that I'm happy to sign. Make that happen. Yeah, is that where or yeah? And also because obviously you probably have to put Andy Howe because obviously he's a big part with Steve Nixon up here in that. Yeah, is that like a good team? Yeah, does Eddie and Andy work well together?
Yeah, so I don't think he's seen off any sporting directors. I think Dan Ashworth had the opportunity to go to Manchester United, and he wanted to go to Manchester United. That was his choice. I don't think there was much Eddie could have done about that. Obviously, when he arrived, there wasn't really things in place, so they put temporary measures in place. I think Nicky Hammond was involved at one stage, and maybe one or two others that were all just sort of temporary measures. And from my understanding, my information, Paul Mitchell has decided himself it's time to move on. So I don't think Eddie has seen anyone off, as much as the phrase looks like a good headline. What I do know is that Eddie really, really cares about the players he signs. Anytime that Eddie Howe signs a player, he wants to make sure he can improve the player. He wants to know everything about him on and off the pitch. This was something he did in 2008-9. You know, when I was working with him as his chief scout back at Bournemouth, and he wanted to know everything he possibly could. Because for Eddie, the most important thing he does every single day of the week is improve everyone around him. Improve the staff, improve the coaching staff, improve the players, improve the club, improve every single element. So he will and always would have a hands-on role in any recruitment. He wants to understand the players, because ultimately he's got to go and work with them on the grass, and he's got to make them better players. He's got to make them better assets for Newcastle, and they've got to get into his starting 11. And historically, you'd see a lot of players that Eddie would sign, and maybe 6, 12, 18 months, it would take them a long time to get in the side. But Eddie works best in a team environment. He works best with the coaching staff. He works best, you know, he worked exceptionally well with Richard Hughes at Bournemouth. He worked obviously with Dan Ashworth for a couple of years where they had a lot of success in the window. And then whoever comes into the football club moving forward, he'll work with them as well. So I don't think a great deal will change. Obviously, Steve Nixon and Andy Howe are also involved. I think Andy Howe's someone who has been obviously with Eddie for a number of years, someone who works independently of Eddie as well, and someone that understands what Eddie wants from the players that they go and sign. The non-negotiables. These are the things that are really important for us. When we're signing a right back, this is what we need. If we're signing a centre back, this is what we need. And I think Andy's very much in tune with that side of things as well. But I think everything that Eddie does is always about a collective effort. It's never about him. It's never about his staff. It's always about everyone being on the same page. And I guess that will very much be the philosophy moving forward over the course of this summer.
So, and obviously you say about Eddie, do you think because of Eddie and his attributes and the way that he go, was it not a surprise to you that he made Bruno captain?
No, Bruno is symbolic of what Newcastle is. It's amazing how some players can just totally get the community and the city that they live in and work in. And it feels like Bruno is so in tune with the Newcastle fans, and the Newcastle fans are so in tune with him. Eddie's always selected captains that have been hardworking, passionate. They've had a connection to the club. He was a captain at Bournemouth at a very, very, very young age. So he understands the mechanics of what that's like. He came through the academy at Bournemouth and then went on to become a captain. So there's no, you know, he totally understands what that role's about. He totally understands how important it is. And I think Bruno symbolises everything that a captain should be. And he's been one of the original players they brought in to buy into the project, to buy into the journey. This is what we want to do. We want to go and get in the Champions League. We want to go and win major silverware, and we need someone like you to be a part of it. And he's been there from the beginning, almost from the Eddie Howe reign. So therefore, you can see why he chose Bruno in that way.
Yeah. Also going back to, obviously, I know you mentioned with regards to sometimes you might not see a signing for like 6, 12, 18 months. The first name that popped straight into my head was Lewis Hall.
Yeah.
Obviously, we signed him. Yeah, he was on loan. He didn't get that many appearances. And then when this season came, you were thinking, oh, well, we might start seeing him a bit more. But obviously, he started every game. And, he became probably, whilst there might be disagreements, one of the best English left-backs, in the Premier League at the minute, if not the best. And that's obviously a prime example of, and obviously we've got the same with Will Asula in that. And whilst you can see fans going, well, just play him. Yeah, you can see that there's a thought where within Eddie Howe going, well, look, no, he's not ready right now, but we'll work on that. I do think his probably most transformational turnaround was turning Joel Linton into what he was when he arrived, which was the striker, into the beast of a midfielder that we have now. Yeah. And you sort of look at that now and you don't remember him as that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The sheer shock, and like I said, I've been shocked. I remember sitting there watching the Man U game, which is the first. I think it might have been 0-0 or 1-1. I think it was a draw. But I made sure I watched Joe Linton, and like you were just in awe and just shocked, like at how he changed, and you just go, "Oh my God!" But he's done it with so many players. Yeah, you see Jacob Murphy.
Yeah.
What he's done. Yeah, Tino Livramento now is unbelievable in terms of that. Even Dan Burn, when you look at that, probably, and I would say probably our player of the season.
Yeah.
In that sense, so you do always see that, and it is like great to see on that. I will move on to another player which has improved under Eddie, but obviously, which was Isak. Now, I know in the Southampton game, you ended up getting a lot of stick from Newcastle fans because of the comment that you made, which was, you can understand why Arsenal fans want him. Now, I personally don't see anything wrong with that comment, because I'm going, well, yeah, you can see why Arsenal fans would want him. You can see why Man U fans or Liverpool fans or any fans would want him. You can see why Newcastle fans want him.
Yeah.
But I understand that was probably coming from a time where there'd been a lot of stories pushed in the media and that about Arsenal and Isak and stuff like that. And I think it probably just, I've said, look, it's going to take us time to get used to, because as a club, we're not used to clubs being interested in our players, because our players were never good enough for that. And I've said, look, it's going to take time, because we're going to get these links with these players, because we've got good and great players on that.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, because obviously you had to deal with the aftermath of that on social media. What were your feelings on that there? Did you have battles that you had to face in that during that time?
So I was totally unaware. I was totally oblivious that Newcastle fans were upset with the media for continually talking about Alexander Isak. I didn't have any idea that there was a thing, that they thought that there was an agenda. So I was really shocked at the responses and the way it became a thing. And you said it yourself there, like, you can see why Arsenal fans are interested in, they want them to sign this guy. I didn't expect the backlash. I didn't expect the hate. Like, first things first, I'm like, Eddie Howe's a friend of mine. I've got friends that work for the club. I've got friends that play for the club. I want Newcastle to be successful. At no point did any producer turn around to me and say, oh, you need to say this, you need to say that. It doesn't happen, right? I'm out there watching the game, live TV, and I just seen Alexander Isak score an unbelievable goal. Touch was fantastic, opens his body, pops it in the bottom corner like Thierry Henry. And I was just in that moment. I didn't for 1 second. If I thought for 1 second I'd upset people, I wouldn't have said it. It was one of those moments where you were just live and you just go with what your emotions are. You describe what you see and you say what you say. At no point did I expect to have all the things that came off the back of it come off the back of it. If Newcastle fans get upset with me for that, so be it. If they want to call me names, so be it. But it wasn't some calculated comment. It was just an in the moment description of an incredible goal where Newcastle had played really well, done well, and picked up a massive 3 points, and you were in that space. That was it. That was literally, like, there was no other agenda, no other side, no other narrative. There was nothing at all, because there isn't at Sky. There isn't like a meeting. Oh, we've got to go and target Manchester United this week, and we've got to say this about Liverpool players, and we've got to say that. No, it doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. So yeah, it's one of those things. You live and learn. Transfer talk is a part of football. I'm a Bournemouth fan. Am I upset that PSG fans are talking about Elia Zabani? No. Am I upset that Real Madrid fans are talking about Dean Howson? No. Am I upset that Liverpool fans have been talking about Milos Kerkez for the last 4 months? Guess what? No, it's football. Ultimately, Newcastle have a player who is on a long contract. He's their player. He's contracted to Newcastle. If they want to sell him, then they'll sell him. And if they don't, then they won't. And Newcastle fans right now will be talking about James Trafford, and they'll be talking about Mark Gay, and they'll be talking about Brian Mbeumo, and they'll be talking about other players that they're being linked to. And that creates chat. That's what you do. That's what podcasters do. That's what football fans do when they get down the pub. They want to talk about players. Who are we going to sign? How are we going to improve? What position do you think we need? That's a part of it. You can't really be involved in the conversation. Let's talk about who's Newcastle going to sign, but get upset when Liverpool or Man United or Arsenal or Real Madrid are talking about signing a Newcastle player. It's just part of the game. But what really surprised me was how much I really hurt so many Newcastle fans by just saying a simple thing. You can see why Arsenal fans are desperate for their club to sign this guy. I'm sorry if I upset anyone. I genuinely didn't want to upset anyone.
Yeah, no. Look, like you said, I didn't understand the uproar in that if you turned around and went, yeah, come on, Arteta, you get the bid in for him, you could, then you could probably understand it a little bit more.
But yeah, that's the funny thing. Do you think Mikel Arteta is sat at home watching Soccer Saturday going, God, that Mark McAdam's right, isn't he? I should go and sign Alexander Isak. Of course they're not. Like, we have no effect.
He might. You never know.
No, definitely not. We can't get any moves for any player. Like the Premier League is so detailed now. Mikel Arteta or Arne Slot or Xabi Alonso or anyone else in the world, or one of the Saudi Pro League clubs, they will know everything about every player. Because the data is all out there. How much they run, how many fast sprints they do, how many blocks they do, how many passes they do, how many shots they have, how accurate. The data is all out there. They will know absolutely everything about every player before they decide who they're going to start targeting. And that's how a lot of recruitment and scouting is done now, because they'll say, like, we want a striker. Who are the best strikers in Europe? Right, that's our list of 10. And then they'll narrow it down and they'll get to 6 and then they'll go from there. So there isn't anything that I can't say on TV that these guys don't already know. And that's why recruitment in the Premier League and individuals in the Premier League are paid collectively millions and millions of pounds, because their job is to know everything about these players before someone goes and invests big money in them. And it is always big money these days. You know, if you're going to go and sign, Florian Wirtz today, I'm guessing, the deal is worth 116 million. There'll be an agency fee on top of that will be possibly 10%, maybe a bit more, depending on Liverpool's structure and the way they deal with agents. So you can add straight away, another sort of 20 million quid. The player signs a 5-year contract, just say, for argument's sake, at 250 grand a week. So that's 12 million times 5. That works, over 5 years. Suddenly that's 60 million. The whole deal is worth, plus bonuses, the whole deal is probably worth £250 million, right? They don't just go into that going, oh, he's doing all right, should we go and get him? No, they have like months and months, sometimes years worth of data and knowledge and match reports before they go and target these players. They're not going to be sat watching Soccer Saturday going, God, oh, he's just said about that player, I think we should go and get him. Yeah, let's go and get him. No, it don't work like that.
Now, you've mentioned that, and you've mentioned, obviously, the detail that goes into that. There's 3 players that Newcastle are linked with that we've been linked with since Eddie Howe's been here.
Yeah.
One's Mark Gay, the other one's James Trafford, and the other one's João Pedro. Especially with the João Pedro one, because Fabrizio Romano said, here we go, deal done. Didn't happen, so that's the one that you'll always get reminded on. Mm-hmm. But on that one, so are you... I'm saying, and obviously you've worked with Eddie. Are you surprised that Eddie maybe goes back to the players that linked with, if there's chances to get them, because obviously that detailed work's already been done. Those are the players that he wants. So is that something to be like? Is that something that you find that Eddie will do normally? Like, if he feels they're the right player, he will go back for them.
Yeah, so everyone works in a different way. Some teams have data, a lot of data led, like Brighton and Brentford, and there are various other Premier League clubs that go into that model of recruitment. There are some clubs that are more old school that will just watch players. There were some clubs that will do a bit of both. One of the things that Eddie Howe's always done through Andy and through Steve and Richard and the other people that he's worked with over the years, they like to track players. So they will watch players from maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, and they will track their whole career. So they might be watching 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds now that are on their list, that they get to maybe 21, 22, 23, and they go, right, now he's ready for us. But the good thing about that is they know his whole pathway. They know what he's done, how he's improved, how he's developed, and therefore they go and action it. So I don't know how it works at Newcastle now. That's what he's done historically. They spend a lot of time watching players' development, not just we need a left back. Who's the best left back? Him and him and him. Right, go and get one of them. They will have a plan, and probably more often than not, they would have watched the players that they target for a number of years, and they'll have a detailed database of information and data and knowledge. Obviously, we know that Ed's in the market for a centre half, a winger, possibly a goalkeeper, and he will go and get the best players he possibly can. It's the same philosophy. Who can we get who is the right price? Who can we improve immediately? Who do we believe can have a massive effect on our first team, our first 11? And do they tick all of those boxes? And that's generally how they'll go into the market.
I do want you, to try and settle the myth that seems to have appeared, especially around Eddie Howe and signings, that he's prone to prefer English or Premier League based players. Is that something that maybe Eddie Howe likes because they've already got the league, and they know it? Or would Eddie go to, let's say, the French league or the Bundesliga or La Liga or Serie A if the right player was there and that was the player that was going to improve?
Well, I don't understand that narrative, because if I was to say Eddie Howe's top 3 signings at Newcastle, I'd probably say Alexander Isak came from La Liga. I'd say Bruno Guimaraes came from Ligue 1. And I'd say Sandro Tonali came from Serie A. So I don't understand the narrative that he prefers Premier League players or UK domestic players when his top 3 signings have all come from Europe. So I don't understand where that's come from. I think that's a false narrative. I think Eddie Howe will sign the best players, regardless of what country they're in, regardless of what their passport is. He just wants to sign good quality players. Obviously, and then you look at people like Anthony Gordon, you look at people like Tino Livramento, you look at Dan Burn, Nick Pope. They are, Lewis Hall. They are players that have come from the UK. But Kieran Trippier came from La Liga. Sven Botman, is another, someone that wasn't playing the Premier League. So I think I don't know, and Newcastle fans can correct me, but I think the majority of their recruitment, certainly their successful recruitment, and most of their recruitment's been successful, has come from abroad. So this narrative that's been created, I don't actually think it's very accurate. I think it's wrong. And Newcastle fans might say, no, Isak's not our best player. Tino's our best player. But the fact that Man City have been linked with Tino, the fact that Liverpool have been linked with Anthony Gordon, would suggest that these players are actually really, really clever, astute signings, because other teams want them as well, because they've done unbelievable for Newcastle and improved as players. So, I don't get that. I really don't understand that narrative. I think it's wrong. And I think the facts are, you look at where the players have been signed from, and I think that would tell you exactly. I think it's pretty much a 50-50 split.
Now, obviously, we'll move away from Newcastle for a bit, because obviously it is the close season. We should be having that little bit of a break away from everything. That I'm going to ask you, what? Obviously you work as a presenter and reporter. what part do you like the most? Do you like this period where it's the transfers and that, and you're in the studio and you're doing all that, or do you prefer to be doing out and about during like the season, being at games, going to training ground and looking around? What would you prefer to be doing?
I like both. Transfers can be tough. You have to be across a million different transfers, countless amounts of players, teams, buying, selling, figures. But it is exciting and people love it. Football fans love it. They love talking about transfers, and it generates a lot of traction through social media. I also really love live football. That's what we're all here for. We're all here to watch football at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, and watching young players develop, exciting teams to watch. I love watching championship matches and EFL games. I like trying to pick out players that can be ones to watch in the future. Those kind of things are always exciting. But ultimately, being a part of a live football environment when you're out and about on Soccer Saturday, watching things unfold, you don't know what's going to happen. You can't prepare for stuff. You just have to go with your emotions and go with it. So I do love a bit of that. But I think the transfer window has completely transformed football through the summer, because summer football, there was no summer football, was very quiet. Suddenly there's this massive industry that's come alongside social media that's created all this chat, all this buzz, all this noise about who's going where, what's happening and what's the latest, and so on and so forth. So it's another exciting part of the job, and it's an exciting part of something to be involved with.
Now, again, nothing too controversial, but what's your opinion on VAR? Is it something that you love or you hate?
I'm very neutral on VAR. I think there are so many benefits to it. The problem with VAR is, it's not communicated properly to the fans in the stadium, and that's something I find a lot. I'm at games and I'm like, what's going on, right? So they need to find a way to be so much more efficient and effective in speaking to fans that pay their money to be in the stadium, to let them know exactly what's going on. The other thing that's really important is that VAR is brilliant for so many things, right? Was the ball over the line? Was he offside? Now, 99% of the time, you can see that on the video. Yes, the ball was out. No, the ball wasn't, and so on and so forth. But the problem with VAR is there are grey areas in football, and you could see it on Soccer Saturday. You could see it on various other shows. One pundit will say that's not a penalty. Another pundit will say that is a penalty, right? And people will be split. And that's the problem, is that we need to understand that VAR is not going to get every decision correct. I don't know exactly what the percentages are, but most of it's something like 90% of the decisions made in the Premier League were accurate, right? So they got 10% wrong.
Yeah, well, I think the Evan Nielsen one was probably a prime example of that. When he
slips on the way into the challenge, and then
when you heard it back, you could hear the VAR going, "Oh, well, he doesn't slip," and going, "Well, you just watched it." So you can see that, and those are and that's luckily, you want them to learn and do that. But in terms of, obviously, you said, I'll still say the offside, the ones that bug me are when they're looking at is a toe over, and that's where you sort of go, well, come on, a toe is not going to give a player an advantage.
No, of course.
But obviously they'll do it because they've got to, because that's the laws as they are now.
The problem is you've got to find something like how much is it, a little bit of a toe or a bit of a toe or a toe. There have to be some sort of cut-off point, that otherwise, like, well, hang on a second, I thought it was a shoulder, or I thought it was this, or I thought it was that, or a part of the body you could score from, and so on and so forth. So, and that's the problem. VAR is not going to make football perfect. Football is never going to be perfect, and we don't want it to be perfect. So fans need to understand that there will be decisions that they don't like, and there will be odd mistakes during the course of a season. But with the way the game is played and the tempo in which it's played, VAR really, in theory, is a good thing. Newcastle, I think of the Newcastle Bournemouth game down at the Vitality towards the beginning of the season, where Dango Ouattara has that moment where does it go off his shoulder, does it go off his arm, does it go off his elbow? And obviously in the end the PGMOL admitted that goal should have stood. It was given on field. The referee went and checked it through VAR, and they decided after a number of looks, no, we're going to disallow it, whereas actually it should have stood. So it's one of those things. I think generally they say things even out over the course of a season. Hopefully that will be the case, but football fans need to just remember we're never going to make an imperfect game perfect, and we don't want it to be. And the debate is a part of what football is about, and that's what makes it so amazing and fun, and that's what the fans go. You know, they love going at it, and no, you're wrong and I'm wrong, and it's part of it. As long as it's all good natured, it's never a bad thing.
Yeah, obviously you mentioned the communication side of it. Yeah, with those in the stadium, we saw towards, I think, the 2 Carabao Cup semi-finals and then the later round of the FA Cup. Obviously, the in-stadium announcements by the referee when overturning the decision was brought in. Would you like to see that put in place for every game? Yeah,
I think it would make a massive difference. You know, I watched the NBA playoff finals. You know, there's a review, there's a VAR review. The referees get together, they watch it, they check it, they talk about it, and then one of them comes over to the camera and says, right, we've reviewed the footage and we've decided that that's not a foul because of XYZ. He didn't do this, he didn't do that, and he didn't do this, so therefore it doesn't meet the requirements to be a foul. Bang. And they've really effectively got into the zone of using that technology. And I think football needs to go in that direction. I think they are. Howard Webb's done an incredible job in transforming the PGMOL. They're really open, they're really transparent, they try and do the right things, they try and communicate in the right way. But ultimately, and this is where I feel sorry for the referees, they're never going to please anyone and everyone. And that's, you know, and that's the problem. You know, again, we go back to what we're saying, trying to make the game perfect, and it's not. And the grey areas are the grey areas, and there will always be a difference of opinion on certain things. Goalkeepers will see one thing, strikers will see something different, defenders will see something different, and that's just the game.
Now, obviously, we'll move away from in the stadium to on the TV aspect of it. Obviously, we know because you hear it when the commentators, they obviously get to hear the conversation that the VAR officials having. Do you think it'd be beneficial for the TV audience? I'm not necessarily saying in the stadium because that might cause, a bit too much of an issue in that.
Yeah.
Would you think? Would it make the viewing experience better? Because otherwise, you sit, like you said, you could be sat there for 5 minutes while the
Yeah.
Do you think those conversations should be made public to the TV audience and that, so you gain that better understanding? Yeah, because that's the one thing which I think is the issue. You don't get to hear the understanding of why decisions come to, and that would probably bring more clarity and maybe a better understanding towards the officials. Oh, right, okay, I can understand why they've made that decision then.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that would be a good thing, because I think the first things that always come to mind with me, whenever I have those moments after games where you speak to officials, you speak to the assessor, or you speak to someone maybe in the tunnel, and you just say, that decision that you got made, why was that made like that? Oh, well, because the rule is A, B, C. Oh, that's the rule. Yeah. So most football fans don't know all of the rules in an intricate nature the way that referees and VAR do. So they apply the rules in which they are in the handbook, you know, in black and white. This is the rule in this situation. So many times I'll walk away from a thing and I'll be like, so the rule is this. So that's why the referee did that. So those VAR conversations, I think, particularly if they're broadcast on TV, on screen, could be really beneficial for those fans at home, because straight away they'll go, right, so they're checking that. And why are they checking that? Because that looks like that, and that's that, and the rule is this. Oh, okay, right. So then you're on the journey and you understand it. I think so many more football fans will understand decisions if they understand, or they're a party to the process that takes you from the incident to the correct decision. And if they're on that journey, then they'll be able to buy into it so much more. And I think things like that will change, and eventually they will come into the game. It's just a process there. They just have to try and get things right. It's an evolution because it's such new technology. No one's done it before up until the last sort of 4 or 5 years. So it is something that's going to take time. But yeah, let's see how things develop and what happens. But I think we'll get there. And I feel like last season we were talking less about VAR than we had done in the past. So it feels like there are, big strides forward to getting things much, much more slicker and much more accurate. But like I keep saying, never going to be perfect.
Going to put you on the spot on this one as we'll wrap this up. What would your one name be as a one to watch if you were advising Eddie Howe to sign someone for Newcastle?
Oh, wow. No, you really have put me on the spot there. I'll tell you something. I don't think this is a player that they need because they've got an incredible striker. But I've always been a huge fan of Victor Gyökeres. Obviously, I watched him a lot at Coventry. I was aware of him at Brighton. I think he is an outstanding striker who I think is tailor-made for the Premier League. Really, really enjoy watching him play. But you've got Alexander Isak, so you don't need a striker. The players
that do play together internationally.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a thing. I think there would not be many people that would want to play against Alexander Isak and Victor Gyökeres. That could be very frightening. I think there are. I'm trying to think of the players I like watching in the Championship. I don't think there's anyone really that springs to mind as being particularly special or outstanding. I've always liked Jay Stansfield at Birmingham. I think he could be a real asset. A lot of those Wrexham players would be interesting to see how they develop. But yeah, I'll have to come back to me on that one. I'll have a proper think and think of a player or two that I think would suit and complement Newcastle United. But there's a good couple of months ahead, and they'll be exploring every possible avenue to try and find those superstars that they can mould into global stars. So yeah, be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and another one which I'll put you on the spot with is, where do you think Eddie Howe will finish with Newcastle United in the Premier League this
season? I think, well, it's always difficult to answer now because there's a whole window ahead and you don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 months, 2 and a bit months. I would be really surprised, bearing in mind it's so difficult now to get into the top 6. Because there's a big 6, and then there's teams like Newcastle and Aston Villa who are all incredibly competitive. I would be really surprised if they weren't in the top 5. I think for what their club are trying to do, the direction of travel, getting in the Champions League, adding more silverware to the cabinet. Maybe getting out of the group stage of the Champions League this year would be a really big achievement, just because it shows that progression again. Go from there. But Newcastle fans can answer the question. I think the most important thing that I think as a football fan is you want to love watching your team play every week, right? You want to get excited about going to St James's Park. You want to love watching your team play, love the players, and feel that connection. That's number one. Football, you have success in football, you have failure in football. That's just the way it is. Even look at Man City last year. All of the success they've had and all the players they've got doesn't guarantee you're going to have success this season. You have to love that team and feel that connection. And for a club like Newcastle, it's just progress. Keep building, keep putting those blocks in place, so that you don't just get in the Champions League once every 5 years or whatever. You get in the Champions League year in, year out. You challenge the best teams in Europe year in, year out. You get to the latter stage of competitions. Go and add an FA Cup to your silverware cabinet. Go and add another League Cup. Go and do what Man City done and win it back to back. Do those kind of things. I think, and I'd be surprised if there wasn't more success at Newcastle for the forthcoming season. But they have to get the recruitment right. Based on what they've done in the past, that's not going to be a problem. But it's never easy, and it becomes more hard because you're fighting against big teams. You have to compete financially, and sometimes that can be a real challenge.
Okay, thank you for your time, Mark, and we'll say goodbye, and we'll probably speak again soon.
Yeah, I've got a couple of plans to come up to Newcastle and St James's Park this season, so I'll look forward to seeing you and seeing another game and enjoying that atmosphere.
No problem. We'll just say thank you and we'll end it here. So thank you for everyone for watching.